Today we begin, or rather we will complete the two books of Chronicles, First Chronicles and Second Chronicles. Now it sounds like a lot, 65 long chapters. But let me tell you, I listened to it in less than 5 hours, the entire two books, and then I had enough time to sit down, think through it, prepare this message, this lesson, and then record it. So honestly, if you want to do this, go through these two books, you can do it, because I did it. And every book I go through, I go every day. All right, I'm doing one book a day. So I actually listen to the entire book. In other words, I'm not telling you to do something you can't do. I'm telling you to do something I did. I actually listened through all the chapters of the 65 chapters of this book. And on top of that, preparation time and recording time. So you can do it. Now, the book of Chronicles is one book that most Christians would say, I've read it, but I really don't know why the book is there. It's full of genealogies, don't mean anything to me. And it's also full of repetition. I read this already in Samuel, I read this in Kings, and now I have to read the stories again. What is the purpose? So that's why we have this time together. I want you to see there's not only a purpose, there's a beautiful purpose why this book is in the Bible. Now, in our English Bible, we have Samuel 1 and 2, Kings 1 and 2, and then Chronicles 1 and 2. Now, in the Hebrew Bible, or Hebrew Old Testament, they don't have a New Testament, there is the books Samuel and Kings are very far from Chronicles. In fact, the Chronicles is one book, not two books. Chronicles is just one book in the Hebrew, but when you translate it, as I said earlier, it gets longer, so they split into two books. It's the last book of the Hebrew Bible. Last book. Okay? For us, it's somewhere in the middle of the Old Testament. Now, who wrote this book? I'll tell you why it's put in a different place and why it is in the Bible. It was written by Ezra. In fact, the next book after Chronicles is called Ezra, then Nehemiah, right? Now, Ezra wrote this book a long time after the exile. Long time after that, hundreds of years. You see, the book of Samuel and Kings tells how the kings deteriorated and then went into exile. And the books were written by Jeremiah, likely he wrote it, to tell the Israelites who were in exile, why are you there? You know, they were puzzled. If we are God's people, why are we in Babylonian exile? So these books that Jeremiah wrote, Samuel and Kings, or Kings he wrote Kings, why? To explain to those in exile. So the audience was very different. Ezra wrote this book after the exile was over. The 70-year exile is over, and many Jews had returned back to Jerusalem. So his audience was a totally different audience. And his purpose was different. When Jeremiah wrote the book, he's to explain to them, why are you in this horrible situation? When Ezra wrote the book, he was trying to explain to them why you are in this exile, but not so much explain to them, but tell them, you have great hope in this exile. You see, they had come back from the exile. Wow, 70 years is over. We are now free. The King Cyrus has asked us to go back and rebuild. So they went back to rebuild, expecting the prophecies that were given to them by Jeremiah and by Ezekiel. The prophecies of Jeremiah and Ezekiel were, you will build a new temple, and the Messianic king the son of David, will come into this temple, and all the nations will come into this temple. Wow, they were anticipating that. Then they went back to Jerusalem. They built the temple. It's like not much of a temple, pretty poor replica of the first one. And there's no Messianic king. And nations are not coming in peace to Jerusalem, flocking to Jerusalem. Nothing of that sort. What happened? Then Ezra writes this to tell them, there is another time. There is another going up to Jerusalem. This is not the final one. There's one more coming. All right? He wasn't clear, but he knew this was not it. This was just a type of the final temple. New Jerusalem revelation, right? Where Christ will come and all the nations will come to the new Jerusalem in the new heaven and the new earth. But this was not it. So Ezra writes to them and tells them, I know you feel very discouraged. You feel like, what's happening? Where is this glorious Messianic kingdom? There's none. We're poor. When nobody's here. What happened? We're struggling to make a living. Where are the prophecies? So Ezra wrote to tell them there's hope for the future. Jeremiah wrote earlier, Kings, to tell them, now you know why you're here. Look at what the kings messed up. Two different audiences. One audience was in exile, wandering. Another had come out of exile and now are thinking, where is the prophecy of the new temple and the Messianic king? All right? So two different eras written a long time after each other to two different audiences. One audience in captivity, one audience in Jerusalem wondering, where is the Messianic king? All right? So later I'll tell you why the books are placed separately and why Chronicles is the last book of the Jewish Bible. All right? Okay, first now let's just look very quickly at the differences between Samuel Kings you put in one bundle, all right? Which you have read, we just studied earlier, and Chronicles. What's the difference between these two? Okay, Samuel and Kings cover the period of the kings. That's it. Starting with Saul and to the last king who went to exile. Period of roughly 500 years. Remember the early timetable I gave you? Very simple, huh? 2000 BC, patriarchs, Abraham, etc. 1500 BC, prophets, Moses, etc. 1000 BC, princes or kings, Saul, David, etc. Okay? 1000, 500 BC, exile. Okay? So, Samuel and Kings are written at that period, covers that 500-year period where Saul started as the first king and then to the last king and then they went into exile. Chronicles covers a far bigger time range. Starts with Adam, all right? And it doesn't end in the exile. It ends in a hope for some amazing eternal future. So it begins with Adam to an eternal future. The span is eternal, right? Very far, not 500 years. Secondly, Samuel and Kings, what do we have there? Oh, northern kings and southern kings, side by side, one after the other, very confusing. Chronicles, only the southern kings, only the tribe of Judah, the line of Judah, right, of David. So not so confusing, fewer kings. Samuel and Kings, political. They went what they conquered, what war they won. Chronicles, very different. What religious things they did, not political. Samuel and Kings, their moral acts, adultery or murder or whatever. Chronicles, there's religious ritual acts, temple, worship, etc. Samuel and Kings, all the negative things, telling them that's why you went into exile. You see your king messed up. You see your king messed up. Chronicles, positive things. Your kings, they are the royal line of David. God's promise will be fulfilled. Not yet. They are all in the royal line. The positive things. The hope. This one is, now you know why you're so in exile. This one is, relax. You have a bright future ahead. Okay? So, in Samuel and Kings, it shows men's failures. In Chronicle, it wants to show God's faithfulness. So I hope you see the difference in the style. So when you read a lot of stories, they seem to be repetition. But if you understand, the focus is very different. In Samuel and Kings, it's from the prophet's point of view. I warn you, don't do that. I warn you, don't do that. Chronicles is from the priest's point of view. Wow, you built the temple. Wow, you arranged the Levites how to work in the temple. Wow, you arranged the choir for the temple. You see, the priests are concerned about the tabernacle, the temple. The prophets are concerned about their behavior. Right? So you see, quite different. Though the events recorded may be the same, the focus is quite different. Okay? So I hope you see the contrast in the style, in the focus between Samuel and Kings and Chronicles. All right, let's now get into the book itself. Okay? First Chronicles can be divided quite easily into two parts. The first 9 chapters are all genealogies. You read it, it's like really like reading a telephone directory, just names that you don't know. Okay? So of course you and I will ask ourselves, what in the world are all these names? First, I can't pronounce them. They're long Hebrew names, all right? I can't even pronounce them. Who in the world are these people? Most of them I don't know. But this was not written for us primarily. It was written for the Jews, the religious Jews who went back from exile to Jerusalem. They knew their history. These were names that, ring a bell. Ring a bell. So basically, these genealogies, all these names, are actually a summary of all that has happened in Hebrew history. But there's no need to give details because the Jew, when you mention the name, they know, oh, this guy did what? Oh, this guy did what? In other words, Ezra was just basically helping them to realize their roots. They came from a long line, from Adam, the race of Adam, human race. All right? The family of Abraham, the royal line of Judah, the priestly line of the Levites. Okay? So actually you see the genealogy, right, traces all the way from Adam and then goes to 2 main lines. The royal line of Judah, which is about all the Jews that came back from Judah. Remember the 10 lost tribes, they're all gone already. All those who came back are from Judah, so they have a royal line. Others who came back in this group were the Levites, the priests. All right? And the priests didn't have a place in Israel, right? They were not allocated a land. The Levites were scattered everywhere. The priests were scattered. But many came back. And so all those who came back were either the royal line of Judah or the priestly line of the Levites. And so this genealogy actually traces 2 main lines. The royal line and the priestly line. And basically, Ezra is just telling them, just like a grandfather is telling his grandson, you remember your grandfather such and such? your great-grandfather such and such, your great-great-grandfather was what and what. You know, anybody not in the line is going to say, who are those guys? Never heard of them. But if you're in the family, you say, yeah, I know, don't have to tell me the history about my great-grandfather. You told me many times before, just yeah, thanks for reminding me, you know. So basically that was what these genealogies are about, to summarize literally the history of the Hebrew nation, right? By just throwing names, all right? So it was summarizing history by naming characters. That's basically what it is, okay? Now you see, this is very important for them to understand their roots, because they were now like nobodies after they came back from exile. They were literally poor, didn't have any status, nothing, and in their mind like, who are we? We are nobodies. No, Ezra said, you are a royal line, you're a priestly line. So he gives these genealogies. I hope you get it. Huh? But for you and me reading, let's like you just read the genealogy of another family, it's like boring, okay? But if you read the genealogy of your own family, you say, I know, yeah, amazing. That's why people write history of their own family, right? Now, so I hope this, of course, in a sense, this is also our roots, because we come from Christ. Christ is not a rootless person dropped on earth, you know. Christ has earthly human roots in David, in Abraham, all right? And so if we belong to Christ's family, in a sense, this is our genealogy, except we're not familiar with the names, that's all, okay? So I hope you understand, when the genealogies come out, don't wonder why in the world is it there. It was written for a very special audience. People who forgot their illustrious ancestry and were now reminded, you are royal blood, priestly blood. Something is good is going to happen. You're not nobodies to be forgotten by history. All right? So that's 1 Chronicles 1 to 9. So when you read it, I honestly just listen. Their names, I don't know, right? 1 Chronicles, second part. There are only two parts in 1 Chronicles. Second part is all about David, right? Saul is not even mentioned. I mean, he's like, he's not even, because the royal line of David, not Benjamin, Judah line, okay? So in second part of 1 Chronicles, it parallels Samuel, 2 Samuel, all about David, right? So you're going to say, please, why repeat the stories? I mean, it's already in 2 Samuel. Why repeat it? Different angle. It's like the Gospels. 4 books on Jesus. Same person. Why 4 books? 4 angles on him. For the Jew, for the Gentile, shows Christ as king, shows Christ as servant. All right? So this book, Chronicles, shows David's royal ancestry, shows him as the type, his ancestry, and shows him as the ancestor of the coming Messianic king. Okay? Now, some parts are removed. It's not exactly like 2 Samuel. For example, he is anointed by prophet Samuel in 2 Samuel, not mentioned at all here. Because as far as the priests are concerned, it was God that chose him, not Samuel, right? So from God's viewpoint, Samuel's not relevant. Samuel just a hand that did it, poured the oil, that's all. Saul's persecution of David takes a huge chunk of 2 Samuel. Here, not a word about Saul's persecution. I mean, when you talk about a king, why don't you show him running around like a criminal? No need. When you write the king's history, don't write the bad things about the king, right? Thirdly, nothing about his sin with Bathsheba. Nothing, not a word. Nothing about the rebellion of his son Absalom. Not a word. All right? So I hope you begin to see that this history is not exactly the same. A lot of it is overlapped with 2 Samuel. But not all, because the angle is showing him as this glorious king who is a type of the messianic coming messianic king. Okay? So those parts are removed. It's not to hide. There's nothing to hide. You want to check, you go to 2 Samuel, you can find everything. It's not hide. It's just showing a different angle. Okay? That it was written in that way. You see, David, the Jews knew the prophecy of Jeremiah. Jeremiah 30 verse 9 says that they will come back to a land and they will serve their God, and David, they will come back and serve David, their king, forever. But David's dead long ago already, right? 500 years ago. What it means is the son of David, the messianic king. So in Ezekiel, they were anticipating another David. That was Jeremiah 39. Ezekiel 37 verse 25 says the same thing. You will come into this land, right, forever, and God will raise up David your king. David's dead long ago. No. Messianic David, the son of David. So, when the Ezra wrote this, he was trying to help them tie up. We came back to the land. Where is the Messianic David? Maybe it's over. The story is over. God forgot. No, God didn't forget. You remember, so he wrote this history to say how glorious David is, how wonderful David is, and God won't forget him. Don't worry. And you are part of the line of David. And God won't forget you. Okay? So that's the reason why he wrote the good parts about David, to encourage them that there is a hope for the future because they come from the line of this glorious King David. So that's the parts that were taken out, Bathsheba and Absalom. But they added some parts which are not in 2 Samuel. 1 Chronicles 22 to 29 is almost entirely not found in 2 Samuel. It's about the preparation of the temple. It tells us in Chronicles how David prepared the materials, how he got all the Levites organized and put them in proper shifts, so to speak, in the temple, how he even got the choir organized and make sure everybody knows when to sing and what musical instruments to play. 8 chapters on David's preparation for worship in the temple, right? So you see here, David is compared here to Moses. Interesting. In Exodus 25, it says Moses was showed the pattern of the tabernacle by God. Mount Sinai, God showed him the pattern, blueprint. In 1 Chronicles 28:18, it says that David received in writing the pattern for the temple. Blueprint. Okay? I don't know how. So, Moses received the blueprint for the tabernacle. David received the blueprint from God for the temple. Alright? So, in other words, Ezra is trying to show David not only as this amazing king, but also as equivalent to Moses. Okay? So now that it encouraged the Jews who had come back from exile and said, wow, we are not nobodies, we are somebodies. We have a royal ancestry. Our ancestor is like Moses. Wow, illustrious ancestry. When you have roots, illustrious roots, there's a huge confidence in your future, right? And then you see when 8 chapters are dedicated to the temple, you understand the character of God. What is God concerned about? How you behave every day, that's important. But 8 chapters. Bathsheba, the sin, how many chapters? Few. 8 chapters on the temple. God is concerned about our worship to Him. The temple speaks of God's presence and man's worship, right? So when looking at this book, you understand, what does God want from us? A perfect life? A brilliant life? No. Looking up to Him and Him alone and worshipping Him. In fact, the word Jew comes from Judah. What does Judah mean? Praise. It means praise. All the tribes are gone, but Judah is left to praise God. Okay? So I hope you understand a little bit of why David is lifted up in Chronicles rather than showing Bathsheba, Absalom running like a fugitive from Saul, a little boy, Samuel putting his head oil on him, That's not necessary. Now we come to, so that's ends Chronicles, right? You can listen to that in about 2 hours, okay? First Chronicles, Second Chronicles, all 36 chapters are about the kings. Remember, in First Kings and Second Kings, we see all the kings, but very confusing, right? Northern king, southern king, northern king, southern king, 40 kings, right? Here, only the southern kings and not all. Actually, only 6 are really mentioned. Don't count Solomon and David, only 6 others. The bad ones basically were dropped. 6 good ones are mentioned. And when I say good, I want to show you what means good in God's eyes. Is it good in character? Is it good in conquering people, doing great projects? We'll see what it is. Okay? So, the bad kings are basically forgotten. The good kings are mentioned. And what is good in God's eyes? 6 kings beside David and Solomon who spent almost all their time building the temple, which is in God's eyes, worship. Asa, the first one. What did Asa do? He removed idols from the land and he threw his mother out of the palace because she was a secret worshipper of idols. He even threw his mother out. That's very unusual. Right? It's not easy to do in any culture. Second king mentioned, Jehoshaphat. What did Jehoshaphat do? He sent Levites out to teach the law in every city. Wow, that was never done before. He instructed them to teach them people how to worship God, how to do sacrifice, what they are supposed to do. The third one mentioned is Jehoram. That's a little bit unusual. Jehoram is a bad king. He married the daughter of Ahab. And his wife's name is Athaliah. And when he died, his wife, Athaliah, tried to kill all the seed of David. In other words, all the royal princes, she missed out one guy, Joash. The next guy that we're going to talk about. If she had succeeded, the royal line of David, gone from history. She killed everyone except Joash. So Jehoram is put in just to show how God actually protected the royal line so that his prophecy would come true. The fourth one mentioned is Joash, the guy who survived. All his brothers, siblings were killed. He survived. What did he do? He restored the temple because at the time of his mom, I'm getting confused. I don't know, his stepmom maybe. All right. All the idols had come into the temple and he restored it. The next one is Hezekiah. What did Hezekiah do? He repaired the temple. It's been disrepair, terrible. And the last one mentioned is Josiah. What did he do? He reformed the worship. So these 6 kings here mentioned, besides Solomon and David, 6 kings, right? 5 of them were mentioned not because they conquered vast lands, built vast fortified cities. No, because they focused on fixing the worship of Judah that had gone totally pagan, right? The temple had gone totally into disrepair. So in God's eyes, what is important? Again, worship. What is worship? Is it singing on Sunday? No, no, no. Everything we do, whatsoever we do, remember our God who blessed us, and we want to glorify this God who has blessed us. Right? Everything is outward toward God. Okay? So, I hope you see the whole of Second Chronicles is about these few kings and basically what they did for worship. Then we see, of course, some addition about how some kings were really bad and they went to exile, but I wouldn't mention that too much. Now, the most interesting part in this book again is the ending. It's very interesting how endings. Let me read that last verse in Second Chronicles, entirely the last verse. Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath the Lord God of heaven given me, and he hath charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? The Lord his God be with him, and let him go up. Period. Story. What kind of ending is this? In the Hebrew language, I'm told, in English kind of funny, let him go up. To do what? For what? Right? In Hebrew, apparently, the sentence looks as if it's like incomplete. What in the world? All right? And it almost seems that all this story, because it's the last book of the Old Testament, don't forget, right? It's the last book of the Old Testament, and it looks like this is a whole story. There's no more after this, in the Hebrew Bible, right? It's like a story in search of an ending. Imagine you read the story at the end, it's like, and then he went there. Huh? What? What do you do? How's the ending? Win or lose? Nothing. You ask yourself. You see, that's exactly where the Jews are today. They went up. He says, if God leads you, go up to do what? Now, the last book of our English Bible, or our New Old Testament, is Malachi. Let me read to you the ending of Malachi. Then you see the beauty of this Bible you're holding in your hand, right? The ending of Malachi is very different. Last two verses of Malachi. Behold, I send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Period. Last book of the Old Testament. Whoa! The last book of the Old Testament ends with a curse. It started with, and it was very good. Genesis 1. And very good. And very good. 7 times. And now it says, it ends with a curse. But you see, for us, with our Bible, we have, the story is not over. That's the New Testament. And the New Testament begins with Jesus, the Messiah. Without him, curse. No hope. You see, after Malachi, there's 400 years of silence. Imagine, curse. But then, Jesus comes. So for you and me, the non-Jews, the story has a beautiful ending. The curse is taken by Christ. For the Jew, the last book of the Hebrew Bible is Chronicles. And we go up. Why? Romans 11, verse 25 or 35 says, and tells us that there's blindness to the Jews in part until the fullness of the Gentiles be come. The Jews did not believe that Jesus is the Messiah. They missed that completely. They cannot accept Jesus as the Messiah. So they're still in limbo. The Jewish nation is still in limbo. Where are we? What's our hope? But one day, the Bible tells us, when the fullness of the Gentiles is come, when God has now saved the Gentiles, he never forgot the Jews. They will come back to him, to a new Jerusalem, a new temple. Wow. When the fullness of the Gentiles is come. Till then, they are partially blind. Their mind now is, the Old Testament is incomplete. What is our future? Don't know. Maybe the land of Israel? Don't know. Are we going to build a real temple? Don't know. Okay? So I hope you see that for the Jews, the last book ends with a story with no ending. For us, the last book of the Old Testament ends with a curse, but we have a beautiful, happy ending. The curse is taken on Christ. He spared us. All right? So let's say we don't have the New Testament. What is the Old Testament to you and me? It's nothing more than a book of unexplained ceremonies. I mean, what's all this killing of the lamb? What does it mean? What's all this altar? What's all this laver? What is all this holy of holies? The whole tabernacle has no meaning until we see Christ. Unexplained religious ceremonies. That's what the Old Testament is all about. But what is in the New Testament? All those can be explained. Unfulfilled prophecies. That's what the Old Testament is without the New Testament. David. Who's this David? His throne forever. How come? I thought they ended the exile already. Oh, there's another throne of the son of David that lasts for eternity. Prophecies in Christ. Not unfulfilled. Fulfilled. Without the New Testament, the Old Testament is a book of unsatisfied longings. God, 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 but I cannot reach him. Where is he? Right? So thank God we have a complete, beautiful book. I hope you love this book. I hope you see today Chronicles is not just genealogies, not just repeat story. God got nothing to do, just repeat. No! There is a purpose. Okay? And the purpose, if you understand, right, Chronicles was to be the end for the Hebrew Bible. But put in the middle for us, Malachi was put at the end. Perfect Bible for you and me, and a perfect Old Testament for the Jews if they have the Messiah, if the new heaven and new earth comes. So may God bless you as you look at this Bible and don't say, I don't know why I have to read Chronicles. Listen to it, 5 hours, you get everything. Enough. We are not here for details. We're here to see the beauty of the entire Bible. God bless you.